Hello and welcome to Oral History Follow-Ups. I'm Margaret Eves and I'm with the Cobb County Public Library. In today's program, we're going to talk about what to do when you've either recorded an oral history interview or you plan to, and what your next steps are once you've recorded the interview and what to do with it. And in case you aren't even planning to record an interview with a family member about family history, you can still use some of these tips for things like letters and diaries. So keep that in mind as you're watching the presentation. So you've recorded an interview with a relative, or you're getting ready to record an interview. So what do you do after the interview? You want to make sure that those great stories you heard get shared with the rest of your family. So again, you can use these tips even if you don't have a recorded family history interview. It works well with letters and diaries, things like that. So after the interview, what do you do? Well, what you don't do is you don't let the recordings and the stories end up in the attic, packed away in a closet, or lost on your phone or computer. What you do is start preserving the audio and the video. Now, if you've recorded that in a digital format, you're off to a good start. But if you already have some interviews that were recorded on audio tape or videotape, the next thing you want to do is transfer those interviews into a digital format. And if you have some digital files that are, say, on old media, like an old computer or CDs, or maybe even a DVD or any obsolete media, you want to try to get those transferred to a current digital format. I'm not going to go into detail about how to do that, but if you look for vendors in your area and just check on them, maybe ask other people who've done that before to find a good vendor to help you do that. So the other thing you want to do is share it. There is a phrase called "lots of copies keep stuff safe." And that refers to not just having one copy of an interview or a document or a photograph even. You don't have just one on your computer and that's it. You want to share those files so that they are in another safe place, so that if something happens to your computer or your hard drive, there's a backup. And so you can share them with family members. You can share those digital files by backing them up on the cloud. And then you can keep an additional hard drive. The idea is you don't want to have a backup situation that's all in one place. Like, don't have all of your backup like all in your house. You want to have a drive somewhere else in another relative's house, or on the cloud, or both. And then what you do want to do is transcribe that recording into a digital text format. And that's what we're going to talk about mostly today, about the benefits of transcribing an interview that's in an audio or video format. You want to get it into a text format. And I'm going to share with you some ideas about how to do that transcription in a little bit. So why do you want to transcribe it? Well, one of the reasons is that often when you're in the interview, there may be things that are mentioned that at the time don't seem important, but later on, if you were to listen more carefully, you'd say, oh, that's really important. And you want to share that information. And it would be things like names and dates and locations and details and all those great quotes and stories. And you may not have time while you're interviewing someone to take notes. So that's why going back and doing a transcription can really help you locate and identify those important details. And then you want to do it sooner than later. In case you have questions, you can always follow up and ask while that person is still around, because once that person's gone, in a sense, a library is gone. We've lost access to their information, their viewpoint. So more reasons for transcribing the audio from an interview is that it really makes it easier to share the stories. When it is in a text format, then it makes that content searchable, and it allows more access. It increases the accessibility of that content. And the same goes for things like letters, especially letters that are handwritten. If you can transcribe that into text, that makes that text then searchable and accessible. Oops. And just so you can learn from my mistakes, here was a letter that I transcribed, probably into a Word file. And then I think I probably printed it out and then lost the Word file. And so I just scanned that letter as a PDF. And then I couldn't really do anything with that PDF because when I scanned it, I didn't use the OCR feature. And OCR stands for Optical Character Recognition. And that's what you want to be sure about when you are exporting your format, that it is a searchable text file, not just an image of a file, because a PDF file, sometimes when you scan it, can just be an image versus something where that text is searchable. So always think about that. So another awesome reason for transcribing an audio interview is that you can then use all that text, or the really good parts of that text, in your research notes. For example, in an interview, somebody mentions the name of a family member who you didn't know about. You can then pop that name and any information into your research notes as something to look for. You can put the information into a genealogy database. You can use that text in blog posts, and you're not having to use that whole interview. You're using portions of it, so then it makes it accessible and easy to share. And you can add that portions of that interview in the text format to family websites or in a family history book. You could even read the interview text, the interview transcript, as part of a podcast or video. So there's lots of different ways to repurpose that text to further your family history research and to share it with family members. Now, 2 rules. Rule 1 is that you always ask permission when you interview someone. You ask them permission for sharing that information with other family members. And it's probably best to not share any of those details online, especially for anyone who's still alive. But within that interview, you want to make sure that that person understands this might be shared with other family members, and so they would need to grant you that permission. The other rule is always create a source citation for that interview, because that interview is a source. And so if you're taking that information and adding it into your genealogy database, you want to cite that source as an interview, an oral interview. And that's important because it does give you some context for the reliability of that source. It's from someone's recollection or someone's personal information or personal experience versus, say, a document or a record. So, but you want to create a source citation. Here's an example, and it's simply you're stating the name of the person is actually the author, the person who you're interviewing, what it was, the date you did it, and then if you're the interviewer, you put that in, or whoever did the interview. If you know where they did the interview or where you did the interview, you'd put that in. And then where is that digital audio or that audio recording, where does that live? And you may add to this, if you do a transcription and then you upload it somewhere, say on a website, or if you have a place online where you can hold things, you might put that information in there, depending on who you want to have access to it. So we're now going to get into how do you transcribe this audio, whether it's from a videotape, there's audio on the videotape, or whether it's audio on an audio tape. And so usually once you get that audio into a digital format, if it's audio only, it'll be an MP3 file. That's one type of file. Or it might be, if it's video, an MP4 file. That's one of the more common file types. So there are other audio and video file formats, but those two are one of the more common. So the ways that you can transcribe audio to text include these, and I'm going to go into more detail. You can do an online machine transcription, an online human transcription service. You can hire a person or bribe a willing family member, which is kind of like hiring a person, or you can do it yourself. And I will go into detail about that. When I talk about online machine transcription, there are sites online where you can upload an audio file, a digital audio file, and it will transcribe that audio file. And you pay usually, a certain amount per minute. It varies. So it might be around 25 cents a minute, and that could change depending on the site. And what you get is then a transcription. And often these online sites will have a place where you can go and see the transcription and make corrections and then download a Word document to have. And the quality of the transcriptions when it's done by a machine depend on the quality of the audio. And usually they're going to require some editing when you finish. So it's a lot cheaper, although it is cheaper compared to some of these other ways I'm going to show you, and it's pretty quick. It may involve a lot of time going in and correcting the errors, and a lot of times those errors will be, it depends on how people are speaking, if people have accents, if people speak slowly or quickly. There's just going to be things that you'll need to correct. So your next option would be doing using a service like Rev, which provides human transcription, humans doing the transcription. And again, it allows you to upload that audio or video file to their website, and then they charge you $1.25 per minute of the interview. So if you have a 30-minute interview, in this case, it would be about $37. And again, these are 2020 prices. And a few years ago, it used to be just $1 a minute, and then I discovered they'd gone up a bit. And what you get also with that, a human transcribes it. You can tell them the names of the speakers so that then they will identify the speakers in the text within the transcript. You can provide them a glossary. So if there are certain place names or names of people, anything that might not be obvious to somebody else outside of the family about, what's the spelling, or what is that place called, or what is that event or something. And so you can provide those terms to them, and that way it will help them in transcribing it more accurately. And there's a relatively quick turnaround. It's not instant. It'll probably take a few hours, sometimes 12 to 24 hours, depending on the length of the transcript. And it's much more accurate, and it can save you a lot of time. So you don't have to do the transcription. It's accurate, so you don't have to go back in and edit it a lot. But it's a lot more expensive, especially for a longer interview. Like I said, a 30-minute interview would cost you about $37. A 60-minute interview, I guess, would cost about $75. So it just depends on how much time you have or you don't have, or how much you hate doing the typing yourself. Now, here's another way of hiring a person to do it. Rev has their own set of transcriptionists who do it. You can go to places like Fiverr.com or Upwork and hire a gig worker, and check out the people there. You do want to look at their reviews. And I looked at a few of the people who do transcription on Fiverr. And one person, their per minute charges vary depending on the length of the interview. Actually, the shorter it was, the cheaper it was. And it was a pretty good, they charge anywhere between 25 cents to about $1 a minute. So fairly reasonable, a little more expensive than the machine transcriptions, but a little less expensive than Rev. And you just have to do a little bit more to hire the person. There's a little bit more involved, but you do everything through Fiverr. So if you haven't used that before, you might want to check it out. And then you might want to bribe a family member. And whether that's the cost is cheaper or not, it's may depend. And the quality might depend depending on who's doing it. But it might be something, if you've got a teen or a college student, maybe they could get extra credit on a history project by transcribing the interview, or might be part of something they could do for a class. Or you can bribe them other ways, you know, take them out to dinner, whatever. So that's another way. And another benefit of that, if you do have a family member do it, is it engages yet another family member in your oral history. And then you have the option of doing it yourself, which means it can take a lot of time. And I would figure it's going to take 3 to 5 times longer than the length of the interview. I know when I do transcription, I've got to allow, if it's an hour-long interview, it's going to take me at least 3 to 5 hours. So build that in. But the benefit is you get to know that the information in the interview very closely. You become very familiar with it and the details. So some of the things you want to look for in your transcription that you can use for future research include names of people, not only family members, but also the fan club is known, friends, associates, and neighbors. You'll find place names, dates, events. You may hear about groups and organizations, church groups or religion, military service, occupations, hobbies, community, school, family traditions, all kinds of information that you can then use to discover more stories. And just so you know, I did a program about that, about taking family stories and pulling information from those to do further research. And that's called Genealogical Springboards. And it's on our Cobb County YouTube channel, the Cobb County Public Library YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/CobbCat. So if you go to the Cobb County Public Library YouTube channel, you'll probably find it. And so I just want to give you some action steps. I would start with something very short, and it could be a short interview or even just a letter, and just try transcribing it or get it transcribed to see what that process is like. And if it's shorter, that means if you do pay to have it transcribed, it's a little less investment. And then, or try recording a short interview and then getting it transcribed. Maybe try one of the machine transcription services. But go ahead and try to do one of those, either something you've done from an audio file or from a letter, and transcribe it, and then try to use that text to share with family members and to use for future research. So thank you for joining me in this program, and visit Cobb County Public Library's YouTube channel and our website, cobbcat.org, for more programs. Thank you.